Hey, so you know how if you want to float a furnishing in Genshin's Teapot, you have to set the platform out, and then you have to get the furnishing on there, and then you have to make sure you angle the camera underneath, and then you have to line up with the sky hurt box, and you have to make sure that you're clicking on the underside and not on the top side. And it's just this super monotonous process that if you're doing it a bunch of times in a row for a build that's very intricate, ends up taking forever. Even if you're good at it, it still takes a lot of time. Well, hey, turns out the Chinese community has had a fix to this for a while, and it's just now come to the West's attention thanks to user Russ Victoria over in the Genshin Homeworld subreddit. Huge shout out. I had no idea this existed until they made a video about it, and it has completely changed my life. It all hinges on this bad boy.
Oh, look at this handsome little lad. Ain't he a beaut?
Oh, you thought the snowmen from Dragonspine event were useless? They are going to save the teapot for us all. So here's what you do. If you set up a snowman, you exit building mode, and then you actually place your snowman head on top of the snowman, and then go back into building mode. You're gonna click on the furnishing that you want to float, and then line up your camera so that the snowman head overlaps the the square hitbox of the furnishing, and then you'll click on the snowman head, and that's it. That's literally it. That's all it takes. No more do we have to slave away with the camera to get that perfect angle. No more do we have to try to line up and find like a patch of open sky so that the furnishing doesn't teleport away to some other walkable terrain. No, the snowman head does all the heavy lifting, and you can be looking at the furnishing from any angle. That's the biggest thing. What's awesome about this is not only is this just like faster in general, but it's so convenient because you can now essentially place down a bunch of furnishings all at once and then rapid fire click and float them all at once without having to individually go through piece by piece to float them. For someone that does a lot of Genshin teapotting, I mean, this is literally gonna save hours of monotonous time putting together builds. And you can use this in combination with syncing and all the other techs too. So if you haven't already, and if you've been struggling with floating, because it's really hard to get a feel for, at least in my opinion, in my experience, doing like the OG floating method took a while to get used to. If you're someone who hasn't really fully acclimated to it, give the snowman method a try. You will not be disappointed. Also, as a quick PSA, the snowmen do take up a pretty decent amount of load, so this is best utilized at the beginning of a build, and once you're done floating everything that you need to float, just make sure that you remember to actually take the snowman out. Otherwise, you'll be missing out on a lot of other furnishings that you could have put down because...
Oh boy! Oh, them boys thick! Them boys thicker than a bowl of oatmeal!
Oh.
Now, it should be worth noting that this method works the exact same on mobile as it does with PC, and it also, in a roundabout way, works with PlayStation. Okay, on PlayStation, you don't have the luxury of being able to click on the furnishing, have it highlighted, and then click on the snowman head while it's highlighted, right? However, for anybody who does play on PlayStation, you'll know that the primary method of floating on PlayStation involves dragging a furnishing off of a landform, having it get locked onto the edge, and then having it floated that way by like getting stuck on the edge. Normally, to do that, you would still have to go below the platform. You would have to look up and below in order to do that. Otherwise, the furnishing just easily slides off the platform and doesn't get locked onto the edge. Using the snowman method, it is way easier to initiate this edge lock than ever before. You can see when I'm just trying to slide these barrels all willy-nilly without the snowman being lined up in between like my point of view and the barrel's hitbox, you'll see that it's just sliding out the platform no matter what direction that I'm trying to like slide it off. As soon as I put the snowman's head on top of that barrel's hitbox, hey, lo and behold, it just locks in place instantly. It doesn't even get to the edge of the landform. So in its own way, the snowman method also makes it way easier to lock things on PlayStation as well. So one benefit of using this method over the original method is in Emerald Peak, the Teapot region with the waterfalls and the subregions that are split into these two different plots of land. The second and the third subregions, Summer Chase Peak and Autumn Hold Peak, have these two plots of land that are set on different elevations. You can float normally on the plot that has the higher elevation, but there's actually this major issue with trying to float on the lower plot of land. The ground level elevation you can set the camera at on the higher plot of land isn't adapted at all for the lower plot of land. You can see here how I'm going from ground level of this higher plot of land to trying to pan it over and then zoom the camera in for this lower plot of land, but it just gets stuck. The consequence is that on these lower plots of land, the shortest height that you can start floating is about 9 units tall, which is way higher than any other subregion's minimum floating height of about 2 units. The Snowman method completely eliminates this problem and lets us float furnishings at any height, regardless of whether or not they're one of these lower plots of land. Now, the only other downside to using this method is that you are basically locked to using the snowman head. I've tried out a bunch of different interactable objects like the flower pots that we got from the more recent event. There were the decorative flower/plant stands that we got a couple patches before. Neither of them work, or really any other interactable object that I have personally tested. Now, I haven't gone through every single furnishing on the list to test what can do this floating exploit like the snowman head can and what can't, but I feel like it's pretty safe to say, as far as I can tell, the snowman head is the only furnishing I've been able to find that actually does this. So if you didn't do the event from November 24th, 2021 through January 5th, 2022, if you either weren't active, you didn't fully complete the event and get the snowman bodies / like snowman heads, or if you just started playing later after that date, you are unfortunately locked out of doing this method as far as I know, and you will have to revert back to the original method, which I do have a guide video about. So if I'm wrong about that, if you're experimenting and you find an alternative way to do this without using the snowman head, please let me know. I will test it on my own. I will make an addendum, a pinned comment, maybe even an updated video possibly that shows like what other furnishings can be used to initiate this like easier floating. But again, as far as I can tell, it is just relegated to only the snowman. So you had to have done that event from 2.3 in order to have access to this method. But either way, this is going forward going to be the method that I exclusively float with. And I mean, really the only situation that I can think of where I'm not going to be using this method is if I need to float something super last minute on the build and I just don't have enough load to like put the snowman back in. That is the only circumstance where I think this method won't be the just very clearly superior method. And I highly encourage you guys to share this video with anybody who does Teapot stuff, not only because I want them sweet Genshin dollar bills, baby, but also because I think this is genuinely going to make the Teapot so much more accessible and fun to use. Really short video, but anyway, that's it from me. If this was helpful at all, hey, hitting the video with a like and subscribing does a lot to help me out, but also more importantly, give some love to Rust Victoria over on the Genshin Homeworld subreddit. Seriously, like I would never have found out about this had it not been them posting and making their own video about it. So huge credit to them. Thanks enough for watching. That's it for me.
Peace.